Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin from CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, history, collecting, and all kinds of good stuff like that. Today's Woodblock Wednesday is going to be a little bit different. I typically show a lot of art and discuss it or compare different impressions, different prints, and we'll definitely look at a print today. But I've gotten a few emails in the last couple of weeks with a similar theme, and I thought, well, these questions are really good questions. They're questions I had when I started collecting. And so I thought, well, maybe I could share some of those things first. I think, I suppose you could call these like secrets of the trade or, valuable lessons learned after years of collecting and also being a dealer now. I also have a different take on things. So, I've gotten questions, for example, one young collector who's just started buying prints the last couple of weeks asked me, how do you start a collection? And that's a great question. My advice to early collectors or people who are very enthusiastic is try to harness that enthusiasm and not necessarily spend money, especially real money, on prints, and actually buy reference books and familiarize yourself with as many images as possible. So, for example, if you're a collector and you like Shinhanga, and for those of you who don't know what Shinhanga is, it's 20th century woodblock prints produced in the ukiyo-e school of making prints. So there's a publisher, there's an artist, there's a woodblock printers and woodblock carvers. Collaborative process. And they have a certain kind of similarity within that genre. They're all all of them are representational by and large. And they show sort of almost like you could consider it a nostalgic view of Japan. And they're very beautiful and they're charming. And so a lot of collectors buy on impulse. They see something online on eBay or in an online auction, and they just have to have it, And I mean, I understand that logic. When I first started collecting, I spent quite a bit of money buying things that I thought were interesting, and they were to me. And the buying really did help my collecting because, in a sense, it fed my enthusiasm. But in the end, what ended up happening is I spent a lot of money, and that money was in education. And I've had a colleague who basically says this, and I agree with him. He always says, "An education is an expensive thing." And so whether you go to school and pay for it, or you receive an education with art collecting through buying. And one of the things that I've learned is the more that you're in a better position to buy work that will keep your attention over the years. You might even grow to even love it even more if you buy something that is a bit more challenging. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But, a lot of collectors buy something in impulse and it's there, they get it. And over a period of a couple of weeks, if not months, certainly a year or two, then they decide, okay, well, I'm kind of done with it. Or the other thing is they frame it, put it up on the walls, and it becomes expensive wallpaper. And what I always suggest is basically if you have a good reference library, excuse me, a good reference library, and you're able to sort of flip through catalogs, you're able to familiarize yourself with a lot of prints very quickly. And of course, there's also other means of doing this. There's museums now are putting up images of their collections, and you could do image searches and see what they have. References I still think are a bit better, and the reason why is that you don't know what you don't know. And if you go to a museum database image search, you have to know names, you have to know catchphrases. And with a book, you just pick it up and then you learn things as you go along. And so that's why I also think the books are a bit better. And they're different kind of books. So, what I suggest is familiarizing yourself with what books are available in your particular collecting area of interest. And, we'll go to the table and I'll show you some examples of some very good 20th century print references. And then they're all different kinds, but the main ones are divided up in different categories. So, for example, a monograph is a book based on one artist, and usually there's sort of catalog raisonnés, which means that it is a catalog of basically the entire body of the work of the artist. Not all catalog raisonnés are complete. By all means, there's always a print or two, or maybe even more than that are missing. But by and large, you get a sense for the body of the work of the artist, and you get to see how the artist progressed throughout their career, and you get a sense of what you like. And looking through those catalogs, especially catalog raisonnés, you get to decide, do I like his early work? Do I like his later period? And what you might find work that you've never seen before. And that's very helpful, because when you know that it exists, then you could start looking for it, which is great. That's half the battle. The other type of book reference that I would recommend is exhibition catalogs. There are a lot of exhibitions that have occurred in Japan, not as many in the United States, and the ones in Japan are not easy to find in the States. Luckily, I have them, and I get them quite a bit. I advocate for them, and so if there are exhibition catalogs to be had, I usually come across them, so please check my website, have a look. And the reason why I recommend exhibition catalogs is that you get to see not just one print or prints by one artist, but you get to see a group of prints on a particular topic that might interest you by a lot of artists, and you get to see how each artist treats that subject. And in some cases, the variances are amazing. One artist, for example, I'm just throwing things out there. If you pick up a exhibition catalog on Sosaku Hanga, for example, and you see Onshi's work, and then you might see another work by Toshiro Maeda, who was sort of a surrealist based in Kansai, and their work was very, very different. But they had very similar attitudes about making prints. So in a catalog like that, brings those two worlds together. And I find that really fascinating. There are other catalogs, for example, that show themes such as Tokyo's emergence as a modern city, and you see artists like Hasui who have some prints like that, and then you have artists like Koetsu who also produce prints like that, and then Sosaku Hanga artists Onshi produce prints that relate to that subject. And I'm just throwing out there Oda Kazuma, a lot of artists, and so that theme unifies different artists from different genres, and you get to see the treatment of that subject. That's great. And of course, those exhibitions that happen in Japan are short-lived. I mean, they're like, they go up, and if you're not there, they're down in 3 weeks or in a month. So these catalogs are great. They're an invaluable resource to just to make connections and find new things. And then the other type of book reference is just books that scholarly books that have essays and describe the genres and the movements. And and I'll show a book or a couple books that I would recommend that fit that criteria. But at the end of the day, your library should have books that focuses on particular artists. It should also have, as I said, exhibition catalogs that show a variety of different artists dealing with a similar theme. That relates to whatever the curator wanted to put out there. And then, of course, books about the movement itself. And luckily, for Japanese print enthusiasts, the books are available, especially the ones that have essays describing the movements, and they're not dense. You could read them. They're not necessarily meant for academics. So, it's great for the average collector. The other thing I want to sort of talk about before we look at some books in a print is other tips for new collectors. The knowledge that's out there that you could acquire from the internet is vast. You just have to know what you're looking for. And again, having references help, but also establishing relationships with other collectors. Groups like this there are several groups on Facebook that deal with woodblock prints, Japanese art, and those are great. That's great. It's everyone helping each other, which is great. But I also recommend connecting to authorities in the field. So getting to know. I was getting a call. Getting to know dealers, getting to know if you're lucky enough to live in a city with scholars or curators with some knowledge in Japanese prints. That's great. Go to the museums, get to know them, get to see the exhibitions. But that, at the very least, I would encourage all of you to get to know people who have experience. And when I first started collecting, it was like over 20 years ago, I was encouraged because there was a couple of dealers that I worked with. One is retired, but they weren't just friendly, they encouraged my enthusiasm, and they were very generous with sharing their information. And that was very important to me. And that's how I conduct my business. Whether it's stuff I put up online or it's private conversations with collectors, I almost feel like it's my mission to share the information that I have. Free of charge. I mean, it's important to have that information out in the public, and so that's how I go about creating my website and adding to it, as well as offering prints and the information I add to that, and these videos, of course. So, I encourage all of you to reach out to me if you have any questions about prints. If it's a question I can't answer, I'm sure I can find an answer or find the person who can answer it. And so that's good, because having a network of resources, whether it's people or the books, will definitely be helpful. And I'll give you one concrete example, and then we'll go to the table and look at some things. I had a collector email me asking me about Toshi Yoshida. He's a Shinhanga artist, the son of Hiroshi Yoshida, and he sent me a picture of a print that was in an auction, and I went to the auction listing, and the auction listing was interesting because it's a new print, and what I mean by new, it was just produced, but they didn't declare that. They didn't specifically say, hey, this print is not pencil signed. It's a stamp signature that looks like a pencil, and it has a publisher's stamp on the reverse. That wasn't sort of made out. It wasn't even clear. It wasn't even specified. And collectors should be very cautious when they're buying something, particularly at auction, because the auctions are created to create sort of anxiety in the people who bid. It's like, oh, you only have a day, you only have a few hours, and buying art should not be anxiety ridden, in my opinion. You should enjoy the process. And I understand people enjoy bidding on things, and when you win, Yeah, it's fun. But you got to know what you're bidding on, and you can't rely on the auction house to tell you exactly what it is. You need to know the kind of questions to ask so that the auction will be forthcoming. They may not know sometimes. It just depends on the auction, and it depends on who's selling it and why, what their motivation is. Obviously, at the end of the day, everyone's in it to make some money, and that's what the auction house are doing. But there are some auctions that are specialized in Japanese prints, and especially the higher end ones, and they are very receptive to questions. They have experts. And then the ones that are just on the internet, and I'm not going to name any, but the point is, if it's just something that they get and they put a sticker on and, hey, it's for auction, and you don't know if the signature is real or it's stamped. Those are the things I want all of you to be aware of. And reading about these prints, reading about what states they come in and whether they should be in pencil or why is there a stamp signature and if they're being reproduced now, those are really good questions to keep in mind, particularly if you're buying prints that you're spending hundreds of dollars on. You know, the difference between a pencil-signed Toshi Yoshida print and a stamped signature Yoshida print, which is a posthumous print, which is a print that was produced after the artist's death. It's only a few $100s in some cases, but in the end, if you wanted to resell it years later, you're not going to get, most chances is that you're not going to recover your investment in the later printing, and you may be well rewarded with the original pencil signed impression. Now, if that doesn't concern you and you're just looking for something beautiful to put on your wall, fine. But I think at the end of the day, most collectors become more serious about what they want to purchase. They're interested in the history and authenticity of prints, and becoming familiar on what that means is vital. And it also helps with just collecting itself. It's interesting, and it feeds your enthusiasm and your interest in history, and all of that is important in the end. So I just wanted to say those few things. So it really starts with becoming familiar, with what you're collecting, and how you do that is reaching out to the appropriate people, as well as buying the right reference books, and just, I'd say before you really buy prints in earnest, it's okay to spend a few $100s on some prints that you could study. But if you're starting to spend thousands of dollars, you really need to focus on getting the information that you would need. So in the end, you won't have regrets, because this collecting area is fantastic, and it could certainly reward you as well at the end of the day financially. Though I do not recommend buying art as investment, though a lot of people do. I think it takes away a little bit of the enjoyment of collecting art. You could put your money in anything else, and I'm not going to advise you on what to do, but there are areas where you can just put money in and it'll grow. With prints in art, there's also there's a connection that could be emotional. There's certainly an intellectual connection, and so it's deeper than that. But in the end, you also want to know you're buying something that in the end you could recover at least your initial investment. Art's been very kind to me, and I've a lot of the art that I've purchased over the years has done really well, especially prints I bought in college. I mean, I did really well with those, and it's because I had great teachers, and I also had access to reference books and the information required to help me make informed decisions. So I recommend all of you to consider all those things, because I think in the end that it's solid advice. So that was a bit of a long talk, and I usually show artwork. So let's do that. Let's go to the table. And for all of you who are joining in now, great to see you. I encourage you to watch the video from the beginning. We are discussing some tips for collecting. So let's go to the table and have a look. So I on the table, I usually have art, but this time I put some books that I think are very important, and they're examples. They're examples of what I was just discussing. So, for example, this is a book on Hiroshi Yoshida. It's his complete catalog, or the catalog raisonné on this artist. And a book like this is vital when you're buying prints. If for no reason you could get familiar with the artist's entire body of work. And then you could decide, oh, I like that print more than I like the print that I thought I really liked. And so you could sharpen your eye and you can make decisions that are not impulsive. And when you go to a fair or you visit someone's website and you see a print that you really like, you know that design will keep your attention for years to come. So that's one reason. Another reason, which I think is as good actually, is when collecting prints, all of you will come across variants. And so, for example, I've bookmarked this particular print. This is the Mount Rainier designed by Hiroshi Yoshida, done in 1925. And this is what the print basically looks like. There's some nuances that vary from print to print, but that's what generally looks like. Now, I happen to have a very rare, early red Jizuri. Here's the red stamp. And the Jizuri stamp just means that the Hiroshi Yoshida approved this impression. And so this impression is very different from this one. This is the standard one, and in here the colors jump, they're vibrant. There's a lot of more bokashi or color gradation throughout the design. Notice that green, that light green that sort of fades to a dark. It's different from the one in the book. The bokashi is much stronger. So anyway, I can go on and on talking about this fantastic print, and I'll zoom in so you could see. But my point on having this print out and this book is that the book is a reference point, and you could kind of compare the images from the book to prints that you come across in the marketplace. And when a dealer tells you, this is an extraordinary print, it's rare, it's not like the one that you normally see, if you have the book, you can compare. Now, I should say that the images in books aren't always precise. And you should always, give an allowance to their variations from what a print looks like in person to how it's reproduced in a book. However, when the color is just so different, that's just what it is. It's a variant from the printing. And so before we go on, I'll zoom in on this print so you could kind of see the printing, because it's fantastic. And this particular print is really early. I won't go into the particulars, but I just wanted to show that the embossing, what the gray that you see in the snow-capped part of Mount Rainier, that's all embossed. It's not printed, it's embossed into the paper, which is like fantastic. The standard version isn't embossed like that. In fact, you rarely see embossing because that part of the woodblock wore down. This is an early trial experimental variant impression that Yoshida was producing really early on when this design was created. So, again, seeing this print in person, and imagine you're being offered this by a dealer, or you see it online or in an auction or something, you can go back to your reference catalog and go, oh, well, it's pretty different. And then you could decide what that means for you. Do you like the one in the book more than you like the one that's for sale? That's also a very good question. But you wouldn't have that question if you didn't have the book. So again, having the great reference library is helpful. Now, the two other types of books, or the second type of book that I discussed, were sort of exhibition catalogs or sort of overviews of subjects. And this book is one of the best that deal with the topic of 20th century Japanese beauties, or bijinga. And it's a genre of prints that started in the Edo period, in ukiyo-e, and continued in the 20th century with shinhanga, particularly shinhanga, though sosakuhanga, there is bijinga. And so this catalog, I mean, again, will show different bijinga, different prints of beautiful women by different artists. But the topic unifies this book. So it's all beautiful women by a variety of different artists. And all of the artists are shinhanga artists. But nonetheless, this does an excellent overview of that genre. Now, this book is an overview of the shinhanga movement. So this includes beauties, but there's more than that. There's landscapes. Let me see if I could do this with one hand. And there's also a lot of information. This one, there's essays in English. The other one, there's also essays in English and Japanese. But this catalog covers so many different types of prints. We got landscapes, we got portraits, we got kabuki actor prints, we got kachoe or animal and flower prints, birds and flowers, I mean all kinds of things. And so this is an excellent overview. It also happens to focus on one particular collector's collection, and he was one of the best collectors of 20th century shinhanga. So these two books, fantastic to have. This one can get kind of pricey. Both of them are a little expensive. But these two are examples of books that are invaluable. I mean, the information contained in these two books is just, these two are the Bible for their particular area. And this is a book by Oliver Statler, Modern Japanese Prints. And in this book, he writes about sosakuhanga and the artists that worked in that idiom. Basically, this movement is artists that produce prints for themselves. They carved the blocks, they designed the designs, and printed the prints. So the information in this book is fantastic, and you can buy this book for $20, $30, maybe even less. If it's the soft cover, this is the hardbound cover, which is this might be the first edition. So, but anyway, you could get it quite reasonably. This book is an overview of all 20th century Japanese prints, shinhanga and sosakuhanga. It is considered the Bible for 20th century prints, and there are pictures of some prints in here, which are useful. There's some in color as well, but it's really the essays that this book is known for. It was written by Helen Merritt, who sadly is no longer with us. She passed several years ago, but she did such a great job that this book is as important now as it was when she wrote it. No book has come along to surpass this one reference. So, these types of books really kind of cover what any reference library dedicated to Japanese prints should have. These are the kind of books that will help your collecting. So I'm going to pan over the Yoshida print one last time because I just love this design so much. This impression is fantastic. And also, I should say while you're looking, this is also a slight preview to my upcoming exhibition of Hiroshi. Actually, it's not Hiroshi. It's Yoshida family prints. The exhibition is called Line of Descent, the Yoshida family woodblock prints. And I will have woodblock prints by Hiroshi Yoshida, some masterpieces, some prints by his son Toshi Yoshida, Hodaka Yoshida, Hodaka's wife Chizuko, as well as let's see, who else do I have? Fujio Yoshida, which is Hiroshi Yoshida's wife. So those kind of things. The exhibition, I mean, will showcase the best work by all of the artists, and you could see the differences between their work and also some commonalities, which are really striking. And so, again, because this print is such a rare variant, having these types of reference books, ones that show, illustrate the body of work of the artist so you can compare impressions, decide which one you want, is critical. It's vital. I have collectors, and let me switch over so we could finish this conversation. I have collectors all the time consigning work to me, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I have this impression of this print, but I have like two or three." And over the years, I bought this one, but then I liked this one so much better. And so in order to save yourself from that kind of situation and being in the position of selling prints that you no longer want, knowledge is key. And familiarizing your eye with as many images by the artist that you're interested in, it's just vital. And you'll see over the years how your eye remembers. If you just look at these catalogs every so often, you just pick up so much information that when you see a print, either in an auction or at a dealer's website or at a art show, you will be able to pull the trigger very quickly because you'll know that you want something. And that decision is based on months, weeks, or years of careful consideration. And that's the kind of collection I think I would encourage all of you to build. And I think that's the kind of collection that in the end, it will be most satisfying to you, the collector. So I hope you found this video helpful. It was a lot more talking and less art than normal, but these questions on advice for collectors, I think is really important. And again, don't be shy. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. You could private message me or add the questions to the comments of this video, and I'm happy to address them. And so again, thank you all for joining me today on Woodblock Wednesday, and I'll see you next week.